Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. In this one is transfer plans, so we're going to have a look at how I'm getting on in Game Week 24 and my plans for Game Week 25 and the weeks after that as well. So I didn't get to make a video on it at the time. I made my team selection video on Thursday and then we got this provisional double game week announcement on Friday, which changed my plans considerably. So we'll go through the majority of my team and then I'll talk about the decisions that I made based on that. So Verbruggen in goal, -1, far from ideal. I mean, I don't expect points from the goalkeeper position, as you'll know if you've watched my videos before, but minus points is really far from ideal. Anything that isn't a 1 or 2 pointer is just poor, but it is what it is. Brighton were really bad in that game and Forest were just good, so what can you do? Lewis Hall with 1 point, again, slightly frustrating because before the whole provisional double game week announcement, I was going to sell him for potentially Tarkowski, so I could have made points there, but you'll notice that my moves kind of worked out anyway based on that. So 1 pointer, not ideal, and the fixtures aren't great going forward, so may keep him, may not. Probably don't have the transfers to move him on, to be honest. Mikalenko with 6 points. Now I bought him in for Rico Lewis. That was always the plan for a good few weeks now. He, unlike some of the other defenders like Pickford and Tarkowski who got assists, he just got 6 points, but still very, very happy with that. He is much cheaper than those guys as well, so yeah, happy with that. Trent with 6 points. He did go off injured, although it didn't seem too bad. I mean, there's quite a long time between now and Game Week 25 anyway, so don't really have to worry about it too much yet. I won't be transferring him out early or anything like that. And Mbeumo was one that I bought in this week. Bought him in for Eze. We heard that Eze was out for the game at the weekend. However, he started on the bench and then came on, so not sure what happened there, but I actually sold him before we found out he was out anyway. My plan was to always sell him. I always wanted Mbeumo in for this week. Didn't quite go as planned. Tottenham were much better. I did actually watch the game and Tottenham were, a lot better than they had been previously. Brentford did have a lot of the ball, but just couldn't do too much with it, unfortunately. Bruno Fernandes is one that is really frustrating me. So he got 1 point, a yellow card. They lost 2-0 against Palace. Really just the fact that he's playing deeper at the moment isn't ideal. I mean, they started with Kobbie Mainoo as I don't know whether he was a false nine or just an actual striker. Either way, Bruno Fernandes is playing quite deep, so he is one that I think I will be moving on quite soon. We'll talk about it when I get to my Game Week 25 team, but yeah, probably moving him on quite soon. Mo Salah with 16 points, or 32 because I captained him. If you use the triple captain, that was my plan all along, was to use triple captain before we got this double game week announcement, then you've done very well. 16 points with a fixture to go is unbelievable. So yeah, nevertheless, I'm kind of still happy with where I'm at with my decisions, which I'll talk about in a second because I'm probably still up on not triple captaining, but we'll go through it. Palmer has West Ham. So I'm recording this today. No, I'm recording this after the Brentford Spurs and Palace Man United games. So before the Arsenal City game, I don't have any Arsenal or City players, but people do. So my rank could take a hit based on that. But I'm recording before that at the moment. Yeah, Palmer against West Ham. Chelsea haven't been in the best form recently, and Palmer himself hasn't been in the best form. But West Ham defence is pretty bad, so hoping that he can get some nice points there. Isak was disappointing. I haven't actually updated his points. He got 2 points. Wasn't great. He was one that, again, before the announcement for the provisional double game week, I was thinking about selling him, but I sold João Pedro instead. Then Beto. So he is one who... This was the decision that I made after the provisional double game week was announced. I'll talk about why I made that decision in a second, but he came through with 13 points, which is way better than I was expecting. He was actually brilliant. I watched the Everton game. Everton were fantastic. especially Beto, Doucouré and Garner were all fantastic. But yeah, 13 points of Beto was way better than I was expecting. And then Ndai got 7 points. He got his goal towards the end of the game, which was nice. Semenyo on the bench with 2. Munoz with 11. He got an assist and a clean sheet against Man United. I maybe could have played him instead of Hall, but Hall had the home fixture, so I was never really considering that much, but the swing of points isn't ideal. Then Castan was last on my bench, and you can see I've got Arne Slot there as well, so I did activate the assistant manager chip. He is on 10 points with Everton to go, so let's talk about, so firstly, my overall rank is 60k at the moment. That's down from 53k. I've got 79 points. And let's now talk about the decisions that I made for this week, because I didn't get a chance to make a video about it after the provisional double game week announcement. So this is how my team was looking before that announcement. So when I did my team selection video on Thursday, this is how the team looked. I'd already made 3 free transfers. I had 5 to begin with. Those transfers were Rico Lewis to Mikalenko, Eze to Mbeumo, and João Pedro to Ndai. And as you can see, I've got 0.0 in the bank after those 3 moves. Then we got this announcement that in game week 25, provisional doubles were announced. So there's going to be a double game week regardless of situation. But the situations were, if Liverpool get through to the EFL Cup final, then Liverpool and Aston Villa will have a double game week in game week 25. Now that's a pretty likely scenario, given that Liverpool beating Spurs seems pretty likely. Then also, if Arsenal got through to the EFL Cup final, then they and Chelsea would have a double game week in game week 25. That was pretty unlikely because Arsenal were 2-0 down to Newcastle in the first leg, and the second leg is at Newcastle as well, so potentially a bit more unlikely. And then the last scenario was that if Spurs get through to the EFL Cup final, then Spurs and Fulham will double next week. Again, Spurs are 1-0 up, but the second leg is at Anfield against Liverpool, so it's more likely that Liverpool go through. So I was basing my decisions on the most likely scenario, which is that Liverpool and Aston Villa have a double game week next week. Now, the assistant manager chip, I was all set on using my triple captain chip this week, but then the chance of 2 double game weeks in a row for Liverpool meant that the assistant manager chip was always going to be best used this week. Now, for some people and some teams, it didn't quite work out, given that if they already had triple Liverpool and triple Everton, they'd have had to transfer out one of those players to get a manager in. I did have triple Liverpool, as you can see, Trent, Salah, Gakpo. So to get slot in, I had to lose a Liverpool player, and my thinking was that this assistant manager chip is so kind of powerful. It's the most powerful chip we've got now. You can use it for 3 weeks, so if I can get 5 fixtures out of that chip, then that's the best use of it. And it was likely that Liverpool were going to double in game week 25, so I wanted to do it on slot. Now that did mean that I had to sell a Liverpool player. I decided on selling Gakpo. Now, the reason for that is because, 1, I'm not 100% sure on his minutes from game week 25 onwards. 2, I'd want to sell him anyway. And 3, if that scenario does happen where Liverpool and Aston Villa double, then the following week I'd have had to have sold Gakpo for Watkins anyway. So it made sense to just sell Gakpo this week, get slot, and then I can get Watkins next week. So having decided that I was going to sell Gakpo, I then needed to think about who I was going to buy. I had a few options. So firstly, Wissa was an option. Now, I bought Mbeumo this week, and the reason for that is because their fixtures are just really good at the moment. It's Spurs now. They've then got a few really nice fixtures coming up as well. So I could have gone down the route of buying Wissa. The situation is I only needed this forward for 1 week as well. That's the main part of it, because whoever I bought in, I was always just going to sell straight away for Watkins the following week. But I couldn't get Watkins in because I had no money in the bank for starters, and I needed to free up enough funds to get slot in as well, and slot cost 1.5 million. So my thinking was Wissa or Beto, given that Beto has a double game week this week. It's not an ideal one, Leicester at home, Liverpool at home, but 2 chances at it. And it didn't look like, or there was no kind of news on anyone being particularly close in terms of Everton signing a new striker. So if all I needed him for was game week 24, I thought that Beto had a good chance of playing both of those fixtures, and I didn't need him after that anyway. So that was kind of my thinking. So I did get Beto in. I did then assistant manager on slot, and that's where I'm at now. So yeah, like I say, I'm on 79 points. It's not on screen now, but I'm on 79 points. That takes me from 53k to 60k. And let's now have a look at how I'm lined up for game week 25 and my thoughts on what I'm going to do for the upcoming potential double game week. Okay, so this is how I now line up for game week 25 currently. So I've got 2 free transfers. Obviously I used 4 last week of my 5 rolling ones, so now I've got 2. I've got 1.1 million in the bank at an overall rank of 60k at the moment. Now goalkeepers wise, it is far from ideal. Firstly, Fabianski has potentially lost his place anyway. Secondly, the fixture for Fabianski is Brentford, and I've got Mbeumo who will be playing against Fabianski. Then I've got Verbruggen, who is more likely to play, of course, but again, it's not a good fixture. It's against Chelsea, and I've got Palmer. So I'm not getting goalkeeper points regardless, and if I do get goalkeeper points, then Mbeumo or Palmer isn't getting points. So it's far from an ideal situation, but I'm not using a transfer on a goalkeeper. I hate doing that, so won't be doing it. Defenders. Castan has Nottingham Forest at home. Now, yes, Nottingham Forest did just put 7 past Brighton, but Fulham are a much better defence. Castan is more attacking than other defenders, so I don't mind him this week. Munoz has Everton at home. Obviously quite a good fixture. The only problem is I'm going to have to potentially play a Everton attacker. Now, we'll get onto that in a second because I may use a transfer on it anyway. But yeah, Munoz is just so attacking. He got an assist this week. He's just brilliant. Now, Trent has Wolves at home. This could potentially be a double game week, obviously, for Liverpool, but we don't know until the EFL Cup results. He is potentially injured as well, which is a slight problem. But game week 25 isn't for a couple of weeks, so don't need to make any decisions on that now. Salah has Wolves at home and potentially a double game week, obviously. Now, I'll just be captaining him. Obviously, I've got slot active, so can't triple captain this week, but that is absolutely fine. Then I've got Mbeumo with West Ham away. Mentioned him before. Kind of just really happy I've got him in my team. He's so good. Semenyo has Southampton away. Again, really happy I've got him in my team. Really happy I kept him because there were situations where I could have sold him, but I'm glad I didn't. Bournemouth just looked so good. Even against Liverpool, they look pretty good. So they've now got very good fixtures coming up as well. Palmer with Brighton away. That's looking like a good fixture now. I mean, Nottingham Forest just absolutely battered them, so pretty happy I've got Palmer in. Bruno Fernandes has Tottenham away. Now, I really don't like the way that, firstly, Man United are playing. Secondly, the position that Bruno Fernandes is playing, where he's playing more deep with Ugarte or whoever it is in the 2 deepest midfield positions. So he is one player that is quite likely to leave my team potentially this week. We'll talk about that at the end. Then up front I've got Isak with City away. I could sell Isak to get to Watkins. That is an option. But I think I just want to keep Isak going forward. I've got so much money tied up in him that I'm kind of fine to keep him now. One thing that I banged on about in my previous team selection video was about not wanting to free hit in game week 29, which is why I was trying to get rid of Newcastle Palace players. My stance on that has changed now that I'll be using a lot of transfers to get the best double game week players. I'm now much more likely to free hit in game week 29 because I'll be getting so many players in that blank in that week. So Hall, Isak I've already got, Munoz, that's 3. I've then got Trent, I've got Salah, so that's 5. If Liverpool and Villa do get a double game week in game week 29, then I'll likely get some Villa players in, so there's more players that blank. It probably just makes more sense to use the free hit in game week 29 and then get all these players back after that when, for example, Newcastle have got really good fixtures from game week 30 onwards. So I'm now leaning towards free hit 29, which is why I don't think I need to sell Isak, Hall, Munoz, these players. So I'm much more likely to keep them now. So probably playing Isak against Man City away. And then I've got either Beto or Ndai up front against Crystal Palace. However, one of those is likely to be sold, which we'll go through in a second. I've then got Mikalenko and Hall on the bench. Neither of them have got great fixtures, so they'll be staying on the bench. Now, in terms of transfers, I've got 2 free transfers, and I guess the only situation that's worth talking about really is if Liverpool and Aston Villa get the double in game week 25, because that's the most likely scenario. So if that doesn't happen, then I can talk about the other scenarios. When we know this information, which is when I'll do my team selection video, I'll do that after we know who's getting a double in game week 25. But for now, I'll only talk about the situation that's most likely, which is Liverpool and Aston Villa doubling. Now, the moves that I thought about for this week for that is, so the striker that I bought, Beto, to then be sold to Watkins. Now, I've only got 1.1 million in the bank, so I'd need to free up some funds to make that move. And I was thinking that Bruno Fernandes would be the one to make way. Now, in order to afford Beto to Watkins, I would not be able to afford Bruno to Morgan Rogers. It would have to be someone cheaper than Morgan Rogers. My thinking at the time was Bruno Fernandes to Utara. That would give me enough money to do it. Now, I really like the idea of doubling up on Bournemouth. If you've watched any of my videos previously, you'll know how big I am on Bournemouth, especially these 3 midfielders, Semenyo, Dango and Kluivert. And Utara is just so cheap at 5 million. They've got such good fixtures that I don't mind that double up at all. My thinking has potentially changed a little bit now. I did watch the Everton game yesterday, and as I mentioned earlier, Beto was absolutely incredible. So there is a situation now where I could keep Beto and sell Ndai instead. My plan was always to sell Beto just because I was less sure about Beto's long-term minutes. I won't have to, whoever I keep, I won't have to play much anyway. They can sit on the bench most of the time. But my thinking was I could sell the player that I'm less sure about minutes-wise, which was always Beto. However, if Everton don't get a new striker in the window, then I think Beto's minutes look pretty good. He was so good against Ipswich. And if they don't get a new striker in, then I'm not sure who they'd play up front anyway. It'd probably be Ndai, I guess. But I just think Beto's minutes might look quite good. So I do have another option, which is to sell Fernandes and Ndai for Watkins, and then I could afford Rogers because Ndai is more expensive than Beto. So that probably seems like the better option. Again, I need to wait and see about Watkins because he did go off injured in the game against Wolves. Didn't look too bad. So, and again, like I say, we've got 2 weeks until game week 25, so plenty of time. But that's currently my thinking at the moment anyway. If you've got any questions on my team, on your team, on anything I've mentioned, then drop them in the comments. But do like this video and do subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.